A metallic crash echoed through New Haven Junction, loud enough to make Adaora flinch and almost drop the pot of hot beans she was carrying. A reckless Keek rider had swerved too sharply, skidding across the dusty road and smashing into a vendor's wooden bench. People shouted, dust rose, and chaos rippled through the morning market. But Adaora didn't move toward the commotion. She wasn't shocked by noise anymore. Life around the junction was always loud, always unpredictable, always chaotic. Instead, she set the steaming pot carefully on her charcoal stand and glanced to the side where she knew he would be waiting. Papa Kelechi sat in his usual spot by the broken cement block, his frail hands trembling as he tried to pull his torn shirt closer against the early morning chill. His beard had grown even whiter since the previous week, and his eyes, soft, distant, and tired, watched her with the cautious hope of a man who never expected kindness twice. "You came early today," he said, his voice hoarse like an old radio struggling for signal. Adaora smiled as she reached for a plate. "If I don't come early, others will finish everything and you'll be here waiting hungry. And I can't let that happen." "You owe me nothing, my daughter," he murmured, shaking his head. "You have your own troubles. And yet here you are," she teased gently, "still eating my food. So maybe stop arguing with me." He chuckled, a soft, broken laugh that sounded like it had to climb its way out of old wounds, and she felt something warm settle in her chest. Feeding him had become a routine, a promise she kept without ever saying it out loud. She didn't know his full story, only fragments he shared occasionally. A missing family. Memories scattered like burnt paper. Years of wandering. She didn't feed him out of pity. She fed him because she couldn't imagine walking past someone who looked at life with so much quiet surrender. She handed him a plate of beans and plantain. He received it with both hands, reverently, as though she had handed him gold. "Thank you," he whispered. A shout pierced the air. "See motor. Chai. Who dey come here like this?" Adaora turned sharply. People rushed toward the main road, necks craned, voices rising. Car horns blared as 3 massive black SUVs rolled into the junction, engines humming like angry bees trapped in metal cages. The cars didn't belong in that environment. They were too polished, too intimidating, too rich for the dusty street. Even before they stopped moving, the entire junction started buzzing with speculation. "Government people don't come. No, NA politician. ABINA EFCC? Who DM they find for this kind place?" Adaora didn't care enough to join them, at least not at first. Her attention was on Papa Kelechi, who had suddenly stopped eating. His hand froze in midair. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in some deep bewilderment she couldn't interpret. "Papa," she whispered. He didn't answer. His plate slipped from his hands, beans splattering across the earth as he slowly rose to his feet with a trembling unsteadiness Adaora had never seen before. The SUVs stopped right in front of her tiny food stand. 2 doors opened at once. Men in suits and dark sunglasses stepped out, tall, stern-faced, moving with precision. Their presence shifted the air itself, a sharp tension cutting through the morning noise. Then the 3rd door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, polished, sharply dressed in a deep grey suit. His wristwatch glinted like ice. His presence was commanding enough to silence the entire market within seconds. His eyes scanned the area, sharp, desperate, searching. Then they landed on Adaora. No, on the man behind her. Papa Kelechi made a small sound. Something between a gasp and a sob. The rich man's chest rose sharply. Then his lips parted in a whisper that broke through the heavy silence. "Papa." The word sliced through the air. Gasps rippled across the junction. Adaora froze. Papa Kelechi staggered backward, his knees buckling, his hand covering his mouth as tears filled his faded eyes. "No," he whispered. "No, it cannot be." The rich man took 2 trembling steps forward. "Papa, it's me. Chinedu." A choked cry tore from Papa Kelechi as he collapsed to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. His hands reached out but stopped mid-air, trembling like leaves in a storm. Adaora grabbed his shoulders, trying to steady him. "Papa, easy, Papa, what's happening?" But he wasn't hearing her. His entire world had narrowed to the man now kneeling in front of him. Chinedu fell to his knees too, uncaring of the dust ruining his expensive suit. Tears streamed down his face, raw and unrestrained. "I've been searching for you," he cried. "For years. They told me you died. They told me everything was gone. But you're here. Papa, you're alive." The entire junction held its breath. People whispered, crossed themselves, pressed hands to their heads. Adaora felt her heart pounding. She didn't understand. She couldn't. This homeless man she had fed every day, this man people ignored, mocked, or threw insults at, had a son who stepped out of SUVs worth more than every shop on that street combined. Papa Kelechi clung to Chinedu as though afraid he might vanish if he let go. Their tears mixed with dust. Their sobs echoed through the stunned silence. I searched for you, Papa Kelechi whispered, voice shaking. I searched until my legs gave out. They said you were gone. They said there was no survivor. I survived, Chinedu cried. Kidnapped, lost, but alive. And now I found you. Adaora stared, overwhelmed, her own throat tightening. She had never witnessed anything like this in her entire life. Then, suddenly, Papa Kelechi's eyes rolled back. Papa! Adaora screamed. He collapsed limp into Chinedu's arms. Chaos erupted. People shouted for water, others for space. Chinedu yelled for his guards. Adaora pressed her fingers to Papa's neck, panic flooding her chest. His breathing, she cried shakily. But his very weak. Chinedu lifted his father effortlessly into his arms. Clear the way, his guards roared. Adaora stumbled after them, fear gripping her heart. She didn't know it yet. But from that moment onward, her entire life was about to change forever. Adaora didn't realize she was running until dust rose around her ankles. Her heart hammered violently as she chased the guards and Chinedu, who carried his unconscious father swiftly toward the SUVs. People scrambled out of the way, whispering, pointing, stunned. New Haven Junction had seen plenty of drama, but nothing like this, nothing this shocking, this unbelievable. Please, let me come, she begged breathlessly as she reached the first SUV. One of the guards blocked her path instantly, his expression unreadable behind dark glasses. Madam, step back. I can't, Adaora cried, pushing forward. He fainted in my hands. I can help, please. Chinedu looked up from where he was settling his father gently into the backseat. His eyes, still wet from tears, really landed on her for the first time. He didn't know her yet, but something in Adaora's panicked face, something in the way she hovered protectively near his father, it made him pause. Let her come, he said quietly. The guard stepped aside immediately. Adaora climbed into the SUV, her hands trembling as she held onto the seat. Chinedu supported his father's head, whispering urgently under his breath. Papa, please stay with me. Please. Adaora swallowed hard. She had never been inside a car so luxurious. Everything smelled like leather and money, but nothing felt stable. Not her breathing. Not her hands. Not her understanding of the world she had stepped into. As the convoy sped away, leaving the stunned market behind in a cloud of dust, Adaora stared at the unconscious man whose life had somehow intertwined with hers. Papa Kelechi, she whispered. Chinedu looked at her sharply. You know his name? Yes. Her voice cracked. Not his real name, just what we called him. He never remembered his surname. Sometimes he didn't even remember his age. Just pieces. Pain flickered in Chinedu's eyes. He has been living like this. Alone. On the streets. Adaora nodded weakly. For as long as anyone can remember. Chinedu bowed his head, grief tightening his entire face. Who are you to him? Adaora asked softly. His son, he whispered. His only child. The words struck her chest like a blow. Silence settled in the moving SUV, heavy and shattering. Adaora watched Chinedu gently hold his father's fragile hand, his thumb brushing over the old man's knuckles with a tenderness that felt sacred. You said you were told he died, she murmured. Chinedu nodded. There was a fire. Our home. Everything burned. I was taken. Papa disappeared. Everyone assumed he died in the fire. Before she could ask more, the car slowed and turned into a massive compound that looked like something out of a foreign magazine. The tall gate swung open electronically, and the convoy pulled into a pristine courtyard framed by palm trees, polished marble, and walls so white they seemed to glow. Adaora felt small. Out of place. Like she had stepped into a world she had no right entering. As soon as the SUV stopped, uniformed staff rushed forward. Chinedu carried his father again, and people scattered to make way, a silent choreography built from respect and fear. Adaora climbed out slowly, staring around in disbelief. The place was enormous. Too quiet. Too clean. She felt like her slippers alone could stain the tiles. Chinedu didn't look back until he reached the entrance. Adaora. Come. Her breath caught. He knew her name. She didn't remember telling him. She followed them inside. The house smelled of lemon and something expensive she couldn't name. Gold-edged picture frames lined the walls, chandeliers sparkled overhead, and thick carpets swallowed her footsteps. Chinedu led the group straight to a private hospital suite inside the mansion. A real hospital suite, complete with machines, cabinets of medical supplies, and a doctor already rushing in. Get N4 ready, the doctor ordered. We need vitals, scans, move quickly. Adaora stood by the wall, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles turned white. She watched helplessly as they worked on Papa Kelechi. Chinedu paced the room like a caged lion, torn between desperation and fear. 1 moment passed. Then 2. Then 10. Finally, the doctor stepped away, removing his gloves. Chinedu rushed forward. "How is he?" "He's stable," the doctor said. "Severely malnourished, dehydrated, and extremely weak. But he's responding. He needs rest, food, and observation." A wave of relief washed through the room, through both men and Adaora, whose knees almost buckled. Chinedu exhaled shakily. "Thank God. Thank God." He turned to Adaora suddenly. "You," he said, stepping toward her. Her breath hitched. "You were the one feeding him. Helping him. Taking care of him." Adaora didn't know what to say. I just couldn't leave him hungry." "You didn't have to," Chinedu said. "But you did. Every day." "Why?" His stare was intense, too intense. She shifted, uneasy under the weight of it. "I know what it feels like to have nothing," she whispered. "I don't want anyone else to feel that way if I can help it." Something changed in Chinedu's eyes. Something deep. But before he could respond, the doctor interrupted. "He'll regain consciousness soon." Chinedu nodded, but his gaze remained on Adaora, studying her, memorizing her. "Come," he said suddenly. "There's something you should see." She blinked. "Me?" "Yes. You." He led her out of the hospital suite, down a long polished corridor, and into a room filled with photographs. Adaora stopped in the doorway, breath-catching. Pictures of Papa Kelechi covered the walls. Younger. Healthier. Smiling. Laughing. Holding a much younger Chinedu. Adaora felt tears sting her eyes. He looked so different. Chinedu nodded, voice low. "He was the strongest man I knew." She walked slowly, touching a frame lightly. "What happened to your family?" Chinedu inhaled sharply. "Kidnappers attacked our home. They burned it to cover their tracks. They took me. They beat him unconscious. When he woke up, the house was gone. They assumed he died in the fire." Adaora turned to him, heart twisting. "And you?" "I escaped," Chinedu said softly. "Years later. But by then, I had no family to return to." A silence settled between them, heavy, painful, human. Then Chinedu whispered, "Until today." Adaora lowered her eyes, overwhelmed. But just as she turned toward the doorway, something unexpected happened. Chinedu reached gently for her wrist. "Adaora," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "You didn't just save my father. You saved the only family I have left." Her heart skipped. "Because of you," he continued softly, "I have my father back." She opened her mouth to speak. But an urgent shout came from down the hall. "Sir! Sir, he's awake." Chinedu froze. Adaora's breath caught. And together, they ran back toward the room where Papa Kelechi had opened his eyes. Adaora returned to the junction 2 mornings later, carrying her usual pot of beans, but everything felt different, quiet in the wrong places, heavy in the ones that used to feel light. People still shouted prices. Bus conductors still argued. Keek riders still honked like they were paid for noise alone. But the cement block near her stand, his spot, remained painfully empty. She kept glancing at it. Waiting. Expecting. But Papa Kelechi didn't come. Her hands moved automatically as she dished food for customers, but her mind wasn't there. She found herself pausing mid-scoop, glancing to the side, half expecting to hear his familiar hoarse greeting. "You day all right?" Memar Boseed, the tomato seller beside her, asked finally. Adaora forced a smile. "I'm fine." "You no look fine," the woman pressed. "Your mind day wander since morning." Adaora lowered her eyes. I'm missing someone." Memar Boseed nodded slowly, understanding too quickly. "The old man. Your friend." Adaora swallowed hard. "Yes. You go see him again," Memar Boseed said. "If God bring him come your life once, him fit bring him again." Adaora tried to believe that. But everything now felt like a memory fading too fast. She worked through the rush, but nothing filled the silence the way Papa Kelechi's quiet gratitude used to. She didn't know what was happening to him in the big mansion, didn't know if he was awake, comfortable, safe. She didn't want to intrude on a world she didn't belong in. And at that same moment, miles away, Chinedu stood alone in his father's restored bedroom, his hands in his pockets, staring at the window but seeing only Adaora's face. He couldn't stop thinking about her. It confused him, frustrated him even. He'd met countless people, polished, wealthy, influential, but none stayed on his mind the way the girl from the junction did. She had appeared in his father's life like a miracle, and somehow left fingerprints on his too. He replayed everything, the panic in her voice, the strength in her hands, the sincerity in her eyes. She belonged in his mind far more stubbornly than he wanted to admit. "Sir," the family doctor interrupted softly. "Your father is resting comfortably." Chinedu nodded, grateful, but his voice came out distracted. "Thank you." When the doctor left, he exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. He needed clarity. Focus. But every path his mind took led straight back to her. And that frustrated him more than anything. He had other matters to worry about, like the unexpected arrival he wasn't prepared for. By afternoon, a silver Lexus SUV rolled into the compound. The gates opened, and a woman stepped out even before the car fully stopped. She was tall, sharply dressed in designer everything, with long lashes and a perfectly calculated pout. Her heels clicked against the marble like they were announcing her superiority to the entire neighborhood. "Chinedu," she called out irritably as she walked into the house without waiting for anyone to open the door. One of the maids winced. "Madam Amaka don come again." Amaka stormed into the living room, bracelets jingling, perfume filling the air aggressively. "Chinedu, why is nobody answering me? Where is everybody in this house?" A maid rushed toward her. "Welcome, Ma." "Don't ma me," Amaka snapped. "Where is your ogre?" "He's upstairs with." "Forget upstairs. I'm going." She stomped toward the staircase, completely ignoring caution or courtesy. Her anger trembled beneath her perfectly styled hair. She had heard rumors, a convoy driving into a market, Chinedu bringing home an old beggar, and whispers about a reunion she hadn't been informed about. How dare he hide anything from her? She reached the top of the stairs and turned sharply toward the room where faint voices murmured. Without knocking, she pushed the door open. Her eyes landed on the frail old man lying on the bed. That was her first mistake. "Excuse me," she barked. "Who is this? Why is a homeless person in this house? Are we turning this mansion into a charity home?" Chinedu, who had been adjusting the blanket around his father, looked up slowly, dangerously slowly. "Amaka," he said flatly. Amaka scoffed dramatically. "I leave for 2 days and come back to this." "Chinedu, what is going on? Who dragged a street beggar into your father's room?" The room froze. A nurse looked away in horror. A maid gasped. And Chinedu's entire body turned to stone. Amaka, sensing none of the tension, stepped farther in, wrinkling her nose in disgust. "This is unsanitary. I mean, look at him, he shouldn't even be on this bed. Your father, your real father, would never allow this kind of person in." "Amaka," Chinedu said quietly. She continued ranting, unaware she was walking into a storm. "Honestly, Chinedu, you need to be careful. Bringing strangers into the house is dangerous. What if he steals something? Or brings diseases? These street people know." "Amaka." The force of his voice shook the room. She went silent. Every vein on Chinedu's neck stood out. His fists clenched. His eyes, dark, furious, burned through her. "That street person," he said, voice trembling with rage, "is my father." Amaka blinked. "What? You heard me." His voice was cold enough to freeze air. "This man is my father. The father I lost. The father I searched for. The father I will protect with my life." Amaka's mouth opened and closed uselessly. But he can't be. Chinedu snapped. "And the fact that you spoke to him like that, the fact that you insulted him," his jaw clenched. "I will not forget it." Fear flickered in Amaka's eyes. For the first time, her arrogance faltered. I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't care to know," he corrected sharply. "You walked into my house and insulted my father because you saw an old man who didn't fit your perfect world." Amaka swallowed, stepping back. "Chinedu, please, let's talk privately." "No," he said, cutting her off. "Get out." Her eyes widened. "What? Leave my house?" For a moment, she stood frozen, stunned that he would speak to her that way. She opened her mouth to argue, but one look at his face shut her up. She turned stiffly and walked out, her heels clicking too loudly in the silence. When the door closed, Chinedu exhaled shakily and sank into the chair beside his father, burying his face in his hands. He didn't hear the nurse whisper to a maid, "God, that girl has finished herself." He didn't hear Amaka's car start angrily outside. All he could think about was his father. And Adaora. The woman who had shown the old man kindness Amaka never could. Later that night, while Adaora sat alone by her pot at the quiet junction, staring at the empty cement block, Chinedu stared at his father's sleeping face. Both of them, unknowingly, missing the same man. And both unaware of the storm about to unravel their lives even further. Adaora wiped her hands on her apron, her eyes flicking repeatedly to the empty cement block where Papa Kelechi usually Saturday. The morning market bustled as always, vibrant, loud, chaotic, but a piece of her heart felt hollow. He hadn't come in 2 days, and the silence where his rasping greeting usually lived gnawed at her. She tried to focus on customers, dishing out beans and fried plantain with the usual smile, but her thoughts drifted constantly. Where is he? Is he all right? The questions lingered, unanswered. Her musings were interrupted by a neatly pressed envelope handed to her by a young man who looked oddly out of place among the keek riders and hawkers. Miss Adaora, he asked politely. Papa Kelechi asked me to deliver this to you. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took the envelope. No writing, no return address, just her name in careful, looping handwriting. Inside, a single note read, Adaora, please come see me today. I wish to speak with you properly. Papa. Her chest tightened. The old man hadn't needed to summon her before, she had always come voluntarily, carrying food and conversation like a small offering. The simple act of receiving this invitation made her feel important. Needed. She set down her serving pot and looked around the dusty junction. The market hummed, oblivious to the emotions twisting in her chest. She exhaled sharply. All right, she whispered. I'll go. The gates of Chinidu's compound were enormous, shining in the sunlight, and Adaora felt her stomach twist in nerves as the guard recognized her and let her in. Her feet sank slightly into the polished pathway, her worn sandals clashing with the immaculate surroundings. She felt entirely out of place. When she reached the garden, Papa Kelechi was waiting. He was seated on a small wooden bench, his hands resting lightly on his cane, his once hunched posture now just slightly straighter, as though the brief reunion with Chinidu had restored some small measure of dignity. Adaora, he greeted warmly, his voice rough but tender. Come, sit. She approached, slightly bowing. Good morning, Papa Kelechi. He smiled, his eyes crinkling. Good morning, my dear. I am glad you came. She lowered herself onto the bench beside him, careful not to startle him. The old man looked at her with a softness she had rarely seen, his gaze tracing her face as if memorizing it. I wasn't sure you'd want me here, she said softly. Papa Kelechi chuckled. Why would I not? You have brought light into this old life, Adaora. I am stronger now, happier now, because of you. Her throat tightened. She had never thought of her small daily acts as powerful enough to affect anyone's life in such a profound way. You've done more for me than anyone else ever has, he continued. Even my son. His gaze shifted toward the pathway, and Adaora turned to see Chinidu standing there, watching them quietly. His crisp white shirt and casual black trousers gave him an effortless sharpness, and his eyes were fixed on her in a way that made her heart stumble. Chinidu stepped forward slowly, careful not to disturb the serenity of the moment. Adaora, he said softly. She swallowed hard. Good morning, sir, she replied, voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, but his gaze lingered just a fraction too long, and Adaora felt heat rise to her cheeks. There was something about the way he looked at her now different from the first day, more deliberate, more intimate, and entirely unspoken. Papa Kelechi smiled knowingly. Chinidu, my son, go walk with Adaora. Show her the garden, the mango trees. Let her see the place that brings peace to an old man's heart. Chinidu hesitated. Papa. Go, the old man insisted, his voice light but firm. I want a moment of quiet. Go, and remember, kindness must be seen, appreciated, and shared. Chinidu exhaled and gave a small nod. He motioned for Adaora to follow him, and they stepped into the garden together. The air was heavy with blooms and the scent of freshly cut grass, yet the tension between them was palpable. Neither spoke for the first few steps. The old koi pond bubbled gently nearby, its water shimmering in the morning light, a soft soundtrack to their awkward silence. Finally, Chinidu cleared his throat. What do you think about me and my father? Do you like this place? I don't usually, Adaora's voice faltered. I don't want to involve myself in your life, sir. I just feed Papa Kelechi. That's all. Chinidu stopped walking, turning to face her. But that's not all, he said, voice low. It's more than all. You changed everything for him. You saved him in ways no one could. And, you're changing me, too. Her heart caught in her chest. She looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her apron. I don't understand, she whispered. You will, he said softly. His eyes softened, the intensity there replaced by a quiet vulnerability. I can't stop thinking about you. About your strength, your heart, the way you look after people even when you have nothing. I've never met anyone like you. Adaora's breath hitched. Her chest tightened. For the first time, she realized that the boy she had watched carry his father with such care, Chinidu, the long-lost son, was someone whose life was now impossible to ignore. Before she could answer, Papa Kelechi's voice called from the house, Adaora, my dear. Stop walking so slowly. You're going to miss breakfast. They both turned toward the sound, and Adaora laughed softly, a sound that made Chinidu's heart twist. You should go, she said quietly, stepping back. He's been waiting for you to feed him. I'll return to my stall. Chinidu's gaze lingered on her as she walked away, and for the first time, Adaora felt his eyes, really felt them, tracking her until she disappeared into the sunlight. Something unspoken passed between them, fragile but electric, like sparks that had finally found air to ignite. Back at her stall, Adaora moved almost mechanically, serving customers while her mind replayed every word, every glance from Chinedu. She caught herself smiling at nothing, her chest tight with a strange mixture of hope and fear. And somewhere inside the mansion, Chinedu stood at the window, watching her walk back through the junction, every step engraving itself into his memory. He exhaled shakily and whispered to no one, "I can't let her go." It was the start of something neither of them fully understood yet, but sparks had been lit, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The market was alive with its usual clatter of voices, car horns, and sizzling pans, but Adaora's stomach churned with unease. She had insisted she return to her stall after the morning visit to Papa Kelechi, saying she needed to continue her life as usual. But Adaora couldn't shake the memory of Chinedu's eyes, the way they lingered on her, full of something raw and unspoken. She had barely set down her cooking pots when a sharp, metallic sound cut through the air, a crash, followed by a shrill shout. "Who do you think you are?" Adaora froze. She barely had time to turn before a marker stormed into the junction, heels clicking like gunshots against the concrete. Her eyes were wide with fury, face flushed with anger, and her designer bag swung like a weapon. "You," she screamed, pointing directly at Adaora. This girl, this little street vendor thinks she can just sneak into my fiancé's life by pretending to care about his father." Adaora's hands trembled as she gripped the serving spoon. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. You know exactly what I mean," Amaka spat. "I see how he's been distracted, how he can't focus on me, she gestured wildly at the air, then slammed her fist down on Adaora's table, knocking a plate of beans to the ground. "You think your little acts of kindness are enough to take him away from me?" The market erupted. Shouts, gasps, and laughter mixed with the sound of overturned pots. Hawkers jostled to avoid the chaos. Adaora felt a hot rush of panic. People's eyes were on her, judging, whispering, while Amaka raged like a storm unleashed. Please, stop." Adaora tried, but her voice was drowned out by Amaka's tirade. Amaka grabbed a basket of fried plantains and flung it to the ground. "I'll destroy this place if I have to. I'll show everyone that you're nothing. A gold digger, thinking you can worm your way into my fiancé's life by being nice to his old man." Tears pricked Adaora's eyes, not from fear, but from the sheer absurdity. "I'm not. You are. Don't deny it," Amaka yelled. She seized a tray of steaming beans and tipped it over, the contents spilling across the dusty earth. Some of the beans splattered on Adaora's shoes, some rolling under the feet of gawking customers. "You can't," Adaora tried to protest, but Amaka was relentless, kicking over the small charcoal stand. The smell of burnt plantain mingled with dust and sizzling oil, filling the air with chaos. And then a deep, controlled voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Amaka, stop." The crowd parted instinctively as Chinedu appeared at the edge of the commotion. He looked furious, every line of his face sharp, his eyes dark with stormy emotion. The gold chain around his neck glinted in the sunlight as he strode toward the scene, moving with the power of someone used to commanding obedience. "Chinedu," Adaora whispered, her voice catching. He ignored her for the moment, focusing entirely on Amaka. "Enough." His voice rang out, authoritative and cutting. "You will leave. Now." Amaka spun toward him, incredulous. "What? You're defending her? You're letting this street girl ruin everything for you?" Chinedu's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. "She is not ruining anything. And she is not just a street girl. She is the reason my father feels alive again after 20 years of wandering. She fed him when no one else cared. And I will not allow you to insult her, touch her, or destroy what she has built." Adaora's heart thudded painfully in her chest. He was defending her, him, the billionaire, was standing up for her in the middle of the dusty market. "You," Amaka started, rage twisting her features. "You leave," Chinedu said again, louder, sharper. "Or I will make sure no one in this market ever forgets who caused this chaos." The threat, though unspoken in detail, hung in the air like thunder. Amaka faltered, her confidence cracking under the weight of his authority. She shot a venomous glance at Adaora, lips pressed into a thin line, before storming off, heels pounding, kicking up clouds of dust as she disappeared into the junction. The market gradually calmed. Hawkers returned to their stalls, and the whispers faded. Adaora, hands still trembling, took a shaky breath. Chinedu turned to her, his expression softening immediately. He crouched slightly so he was at her level, careful not to touch her without consent. "Adaora. I'm so sorry," he said, voice low and filled with something raw, almost guilty. "I should have stopped her sooner. I should have protected you from all this." She shook her head, struggling to smile. It's not your fault," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm used to chaos." "No," he said firmly, placing a hand lightly near hers on the edge of the stand, careful not to touch her but letting her feel the warmth radiating from him. This isn't just chaos. This is your life. And you didn't deserve that. He paused, taking a breath. I don't want anyone hurting you. Not her, not anyone. You've already given so much. Adaora's cheeks burned, not from shame, but from something heavier, something fluttering deep in her chest. She wanted to look away, wanted to pretend she wasn't affected by the intensity of his gaze, the rough edge of emotion in his voice, but she couldn't. Chinidu's voice softened, his anger melting into something warmer. I can't stop thinking about you, Adaora, he admitted quietly. And I don't care that we come from different worlds. You make me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. And I don't want to lose it, or you. Adaora swallowed hard, her eyes misting. She had never imagined the son of Papa Kelechi, the wealthy, polished, untouchable Chinidu, could see her like this. Not as a poor vendor, not as a girl from the market, but as someone capable of stirring something genuine inside him. She started, then faltered. Words failed her entirely. Chinidu bent slightly closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You don't have to say anything yet. Just know that I see you. Truly see you. The sound of the nearby market faded into background noise. The dust, the shouting, the overturned plates all disappeared from Adaora's awareness. All that remained was the warmth of Chinidu's presence, the electricity between them, and the lingering feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. Finally, she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, and he smiled, a hint of relief in his eyes. Come, he said gently. Let's fix this mess together. And then, we'll go see Papa Kelechi. He'll want to know everything. Adaora followed him, stepping carefully over the remains of her stall. Her heart raced, a mixture of fear, excitement, and hope. Sparks had been lit, and for the first time, she felt that her world and Chinidu's could collide without disaster, but only if they navigated it together. The car ride back to the mansion was quiet at first. Adaora sat beside Chinidu, her hands folded in her lap, feeling the weight of the morning's chaos settling slowly into a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. The polished interior of the SUV smelled faintly of leather and air freshener, a world so far removed from her dusty street stall that she felt as if she'd been transported into another life entirely. Chinidu glanced at her, his eyes softening. Adaora, he began, his voice low, almost hesitant. I can't stop thinking about you. About how brave, kind, and extraordinary you are. Anne, I want you in my life. Not as a charity case, not as some whim. I want you, as someone I care for, as someone I can be with. Adaora blinked, caught off guard. Her throat tightened. You want to be with someone like me? But I'm just, me. A girl with a small stall, cooking beans and plantain for people on the street. Chinidu laughed softly, the sound warm and comforting. He reached out, gently brushing a stray hair from her face. Adaora, that's exactly why I want to be with you. You're real. You're kind. You see the world differently, and, honestly, I'd be lucky to have someone like you by my side. She looked at him, surprise etched across her face. Her fingers fiddled with the hem of her sleeve. I never imagined someone like you noticing me like that. He smiled, a teasing glint in his eyes. Someone like me? You mean a billionaire who shows up in 3 SUVs and still wants to fight traffic to defend your honor? He chuckled, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. Don't worry about your little stall anymore. Once we're together, you won't need it. I'll give you a life far better than anything you've ever dreamed of. Adaora's jaw dropped slightly, then a small laugh escaped her. Better than beans and plantains, she joked, shaking her head in disbelief. Way better, he replied, grinning. But you have to promise me something. Never stop being who you are. That's why I fell for you. Adaora felt her heart flutter. She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she imagined a life that didn't start at a dusty junction, a life filled with opportunity, care, and dare she hope, love. By the time they arrived at the mansion, the sun was high, casting gold over the manicured gardens. Papa Kelechi was waiting outside, seated on the same old cement bench he had claimed as his spot, though now flanked by cushions and a small table of refreshments. Ah, my dear Adaora. Chinidu, he exclaimed, his voice carrying that same warmth and gentle authority. Come, sit. I have been waiting to hear everything. And now, we celebrate. They approached him, and Adaora felt a sense of calm wash over her. For all the chaos and drama, this was the moment she had unknowingly worked toward, a place where kindness was rewarded, where hearts healed, and where connections mattered more than wealth or status. Chinidu leaned closer to her as they sat down beside Papa Kelechi. See, he murmured. You don't need to be afraid of anything anymore. You're with people who value you. And soon, with me. Adaora swallowed hard, smiling shyly. I never thought life could be like this. I was worried about beans and plantains, about customers, about small things. Chinidu chuckled, his arm brushing hers lightly. Small things. You've fed a man who's been alone for years, given him hope, and even changed the course of my life. You think that's small? They all laughed together, the sound carrying across the garden. Papa Kelech's eyes twinkled as he watched them, his frail hands reaching out to hold theirs. Kindness, love, laughter, this is what matters most. And you too, you've both reminded me that miracles exist every day. But just as the laughter faded into a comfortable silence, the sound of hurried footsteps approached. The air shifted. Amaka burst into the garden, her face streaked with tears and mascara, her high heels kicking up tiny clouds of dust. Chinedu, please, wait, don't do this. You can't leave me. I can't afford to lose you. Her voice cracked as she reached for him, pleading. I love you. I've always loved you. Don't choose her over me. Chinedu looked at her, expression calm but resolute. He gently but firmly moved between her and Adaora. Amaka, it's too late. I made my choice. I will not be swayed by desperation or fear. This is my life, and I will not compromise what I know is right. Amaka's hands fell to her sides, trembling. She took a shaky step back, then another. Chinedu, please. I'm sorry, he said softly but firmly. This ends here. Goodbye. Her face fell, and she spun away, her heels clicking harshly against the stone pathway as she left the mansion, dejected and defeated. For the first time, Adaora felt a surge of relief and satisfaction, not at her rival's pain, but at the quiet justice of kindness prevailing. Chinedu turned to Adaora, a gentle smile breaking across his face. See? No more interruptions. No more chaos. Just us. And Papa Kelechi. Adaora laughed, feeling the tension melt away. I can't believe this is real, she said softly, reaching for his hand. He took it, lacing their fingers together naturally, like they had always belonged. Papa Kelechi's eyes glimmered with pride. Adaora, Chinedu, you make an old man happy. You've shown me that love, kindness, and courage can change the course of lives. And now, it is your turn. They spent the afternoon together, talking, laughing, and sharing stories of the streets, of survival, and of hope. The mansion felt alive with warmth, not just because of luxury, but because of hearts open to one another, healed and ready to embrace the future. Chinedu leaned closer to Adaora as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the garden. You know, he whispered, you don't have to ever worry about the little things again. I want to give you everything, Adaora, not because I can, but because I want to. And I want to do it with you, every step of the way. Adaora felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from a fullness she had never known. I never thought someone like you could care for someone like me, she admitted, voice trembling. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Adaora, you are not someone like you. You are extraordinary. And I am lucky that you've come into my life. Lucky that kindness brought us together. And there, in the golden light of the mansion gardens, with Papa Kelechi smiling approvingly, Adaora finally allowed herself to imagine a life beyond the junction, a life with Chinedu, a life filled with hope, love, and the promise that simple acts of kindness could create miracles. If you enjoyed this story, and people like Adaora all over the world, tell us where you are watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales of love, kindness, and life-changing moment.